In Chapter 13, we're going to study the cardiovascular system. Please note that there's a second PowerPoint that covers blood vessels found in the human body. The APR program contains many excellent animations on the cardiovascular system. A really good one is the heart fly-through in 3D. The cardiovascular system is a closed system. It consists of the heart, which is the pump, vessels, which act as tubes, and the fluid, which is blood. By the end of your life, your heart may have beat more than 2.5 billion times. Let's look at the functions of the cardiovascular system. Again, the heart is a pump that circulates blood to all parts of the body. The vessels involved are the arteries, veins, and capillaries. These help to distribute blood from the heart to your body cells and to return blood to the heart. Blood carries oxygen and nutrients to the cells and carries waste products away. The cardiovascular system consists of two circuits. Pulmonary circuit. Pulmonary means pertaining to the lungs. So in this circuit, deoxygenated or oxygen-poor blood is carried to the lungs, where it is reoxygenated to return back to the heart. Systemic circuit. The systemic circuit carries oxygenated or oxygen-rich blood to all the cells of your body. There's a really good APR animation on systemic versus pulmonary circulation. Let's look at the location of the heart. The heart is found in the thoracic cavity within the pericardial cavity. The pericardium is the protective membrane surrounding the heart. There is an outermost layer known as the fibrous pericardium, which consists of dense connective tissue. Deep to that, you find the parietal pericardium. Beneath this is the pericardial space or cavity, which contains pericardial fluid. This prevents friction between the two layers. The innermost layer being the visceral pericardium. So we covered this in Chapter 1. The parietal and the visceral pericardium. The visceral pericardium lines the surface of the heart itself, and it's also referred to as the epicardium. If you look at the visceral and parietal pericardium, it kind of looks like a balloon that surrounds, encloses, and protects the heart. Let's look at the layers of the heart wall. The visceral pericardium or epicardium again surrounds the surface of the heart and is part of the serous membrane. The bulk of the heart itself is the myocardium. This consists of cardiac muscle tissue. The myocardium is responsible for the pumping action of the heart. As we'll discuss in a few minutes, there are specialized cardiac muscle cells that generate action potential and nerve stimuli, so the heart is known as being self-excitatory. The nervous system responds to speed up or slow down the heart rate, but it has its own inherent rhythm. The endocardium is the lining for the heart chambers and valves. The apex is the point of the heart. It's located between your 5th and 6th rib. The apex rests on the diaphragm. The base is formed by the posterior surface of the atria. This is where you find the attachment of several large blood vessels. This is beneath your 2nd rib. Now we're going to look at the chambers of the heart, and it's actually easy to just draw a little simple heart diagram. Remember an anatomical position. What's on your left of the PowerPoint screen is the right side of the heart, and what's on your right hand side is the left. The two upper chambers are called the atria. So there's a right atria and left atrium. Atria just being plural for atrium. This is where blood goes into the heart. The lower chambers are the ventricles. So you can see a right and left ventricle. This is where blood goes out of the heart. The atria are going to contract at the same time, followed by the ventricles. The right side of the heart receives deoxygenated blood from the body. The left side of the heart receives oxygenated blood from the lungs. You can see this in diagrams as it's kind of color-coded. Deoxygenated blood is depicted as being blue, where oxygenated blood is depicted as being red. The right atrium receives blood from the following vessels. The superior vena cava is a large vein that's draining blood from your head, your neck, your arms, and shoulders. Blood below the heart feeds into the inferior vena cava. The heart itself has its own series of arteries and veins. Deoxygenated blood drains into the coronary sinus. From the right atrium, blood is then pumped to the right ventricle. The right ventricle receives blood from the right atrium. When it contracts, it sends the blood out of the heart through the pulmonary trunk to the pulmonary arteries. This distributes blood to the lungs. The left atrium receives blood from the pulmonary veins. This blood has been oxygenated. When it pumps, its blood is sent to the left ventricle. The left ventricle sends blood out of the heart through the aorta. The left ventricle is the most muscular of all the chambers. The right and left side of the heart are separated by a structure known as the interventricular septum. Inter meaning between, like interstate highway, and septum, partition. The septum of the heart ensures that there's no mixing of blood between the right and left sides. The atria contract at the same time, sending blood to the ventricles. The ventricles contract, the blood exits the heart. The function of heart valves is to ensure one-way flow of blood and to prevent the backflow of blood from one chamber to the other or from the outside of the heart. Between the atria and ventricle on both sides of the heart lie atrioventricular valves. Let's look at the right side. The right AV valve is also called the tricuspid valve. This is because the valve has 3 flaps or cusps. The left AV valve is found on the left side of the heart. It's also referred to as the bicuspid or mitral valve. It has 2 flaps and also resembles the mitre, a hat worn by bishops. The heart valves are kept in place by chordae tendineae. These are tendinous cords. These are attached to the cusps of the valves. The chordae tendineae are attached to papillary muscle. These are cone-shaped muscles. These secure the chordae tendineae to the ventricular wall. The valves flip open and shut in response to pressure changes. When the ventricles are contracted, this would tend to push the AV valves open in reverse direction. When the ventricles contract, the papillary muscles contract, pulling on the cords, and this keeps the cusps in place. When blood exits the heart, it goes through semilunar valves. These look like half moons. The right semilunar valve is also called the pulmonary semilunar valve. It's found on the entrance to the pulmonary trunk. On the left side, you'll find the aortic semilunar valve. It's found on the entrance to the ascending aorta. The aorta in this area kind of has 3 regions. Ascending, it goes up, arch, it makes a curve, and descending, it distends posteriorly to the heart. Another path of circulation is the coronary circulation. This supplies the myocardium itself with oxygenated blood. This occurs through the right and left coronary arteries. The coronary arteries arise from the ascending aorta. So right after the blood exits the heart through the aortic semilunar valve, you'll see the origin of the right and left coronary arteries. The left coronary artery branches into the left anterior descending artery, sometimes called the LAD or LAD, and the circumflex artery that curves around the back of the heart. This supplies blood to the left side of the heart. The right coronary artery supplies blood to the right side of the heart. We're not going to go into all the individual branches of these arteries. The left anterior descending artery is the major vessel delivering blood to the left ventricle. If this becomes blocked, it causes a massive heart attack. This is why it's often referred to as the widowmaker. After blood passes through the coronary arteries and through capillaries, it then flows into the coronary veins. The coronary veins run parallel to the coronary arteries, and the blood is collected in the coronary sinus. This blood then empties into the right atrium of the heart. The arch of the aorta has three branches. The first is the brachiocephalic artery. This supplies blood to structures of the shoulder, extremities, and head on the right side of the body. The second branch is the left common carotid artery. This supplies blood to the left side of the neck and head. The third branch is the left subclavian artery. This supplies blood to the upper left thorax and left arm. If you look on the diagram below, the brachiocephalic artery splits or branches into the right common carotid artery and right subclavian artery. Next, we'll look at the cardiac conduction system. This is an intrinsic conduction system that sets the basic rhythm of the heart. The heart itself generates impulses which stimulates the heart to contract. The heart, again, is self-excitatory and initiates a beat approximately 70 to 80 times per minute. The heart consists of a mass of merging fibers that act together as a unit. This allows the atria to contract together or in sync, as well as the ventricles. As we mentioned, the heart generates its own intrinsic rate. The nervous system is able to speed up or slow down the heart rate. Norepinephrine speeds up heart rate, while acetylcholine decreases heart rate. Remember that the autonomic nervous system is the division of the nervous system that helps regulate the function of internal organs. If we look at the myocardium and the myocardial cells, 99% of the heart muscle cells are involved in contraction. The other 1% are the conducting cells. These are cells that conduct the electrical impulse throughout the heart. The SA node is the pacemaker of the heart. It's located in the right atria beneath the opening of the superior vena cava. It consists of conductile muscle cells. The SA node generates the inherent electrical rhythmicity of the heart. It fires 70 to 80 times a minute while you're at rest. After the SA node fires, the impulse spreads throughout the cells of the atria. This causes the atria to contract. This is referred to as atrial systole. The impulse continues to the AV node. If something were to happen to the SA node, the AV node is able to take up the role as the pacemaker. Let's look at the atrioventricular AV node. It's located in the inferior right atrium by the interventricular septum. The impulse next travels to the AV bundle, to the right and left bundle branches, until the Purkinje fibers and the ventricular sides. Be sure to watch the APR animation, Conduction System of the Heart. A common test that is done to measure the electrical activity of the heart, the function of the SA and AV node and associated structures, is an EKG, also known as electrocardiogram. The cardiac cycle consists of two phases: systole, which is the contraction phase, diastole, which is the relaxation phase. Average heart rate is about 75 beats per minute. Let's start with atrial diastole, with atria relaxing. The atria are filling with blood. When the pressure in the atria exceeds that of the ventricle, it pushes the AV valves open. The atria now contract. Even though blood has been exiting the atria into the ventricles, atrial contraction continues to fill the ventricles. Ventricular systole is when the ventricles contract. Once they're filled with blood from the atria, pressure increases, signal reaches the ventricles, they retract with enough force to open up the semilunar valves. Blood flows out of the heart into the pulmonary trunk and the aorta. The ventricles then relax. For a short period of time, the atria and ventricles are filling passively. All of the valves are closed, and though the pressure in the chambers is high enough, the pressure in the atria will exceed that of the ventricles, once again opening the AV valves. APR also has a really good animation entitled Cardiac Cycle. Blood pressure is the force of blood against the inner walls of the blood vessels, technically anywhere in the cardiovascular system. But when you hear the term blood pressure, we're most often referring to arterial pressure. Blood pressure rises and falls following the pattern established by the cardiac cycle. During ventricular contraction, the atrial pressure is at its highest. This is referred to as the systolic pressure. When the ventricles are relaxing, atrial pressure is at its lowest. This is known as diastolic pressure. Note, the atrial blood pressure decreases as the blood is further away from the left ventricle. A sphygmomanometer is the device used to measure arterial blood pressure. The systolic diastolic pressure of 120/80 is considered to be normal. Here you can see in the aorta and the large arteries you get a reading of 120/80. The blood pressure is going to decrease as it runs through the small, large veins and eventually the two vena cava. The surge of blood that occurs with ventricular contractions can be felt at certain points in the body. This is known as your pulse. This is because arteries are very elastic, and they will expand and recoil in response to ventricular contraction. Common pulse points occur radial artery, carotid artery, brachial, and femoral artery. This diagram shows common pulse points. The amount of blood pumped at any one time must adjust to meet the current needs of the body. For instance, if you are exercising, you're going to need to have your heart rate elevate. The SA node, AV node, and myocardium are innervated by branches of the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions of the autonomic nervous system. The sympathetic division is involved in fight and flight responses, and its impulses are going to increase the speed and strength of heart contractions. The parasympathetic division is involved in rest and digest, so its impulses are going to decrease the heart rate. And these both function at the same time, kind of like you're driving your car with 2 feet. So if the heart rate needs to slow down, you would increase parasympathetic impulses and decrease sympathetic impulses. The medulla oblongata contains the cardiac control center. This is the area of the brain that balances the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions of the nervous system. Baroreceptors are sensory receptors that detect a change in blood pressure. I always remember this by thinking of the term barometer. If arterial blood pressure increases, the cardiac center of the medulla oblongata is going to send parasympathetic impulses to slow down your heart rate. If your arterial pressure drops, the medulla oblongata is going to send sympathetic impulses to increase the heart rate and adjust blood pressure. Be sure to watch the APR animation baroreceptor reflex. This shows the response when blood pressure starts to elevate. This diagram is just showing how the autonomic nervous system affects the activities of the SA and AV node. If someone's resting heart rate is more than 100 beats per minute, this is called tachycardia. This can result due to heart dysfunction or if you had too much caffeine or an individual that had taken a drug such as cocaine. Bradycardia is less than 60 beats per minute. This can be due to heart dysfunction, though it's also found in people that do a lot of high endurance sports. Their heart just beats more efficiently and doesn't need to beat as many times at rest. Heart sounds are due to the vibrations of the heart tissue as the valves close. So you're not really hearing the valves close, you're just hearing the vibrations that are generated when they do. I call this the onomatopoeia of the heart. It's often referred to as lup-dup, lup-dup. The lup was the ventricles contract and the AV valve shut, and dup when the ventricles relax, causing the semilunar valves to shut. Let's go through some Greek and Latin word parts. Brady, meaning slow. Tachy, fast, rapid. Cardi, heart. Myo, muscle. IA, condition. IUM, structure or tissue. Ac, this is another ending used to define pertaining to. Peri, around or surrounding. Condition of slow heart rate. Bradycardia. Condition of rapid heart rate. Tachycardia. Tissue that surrounds the heart. This would be pericardium. Pertaining to the heart, cardiac. Muscular layer of the heart, myocardium. These are just some diseases and disorders associated with the cardiovascular system that will not be on the exam, but you may find interesting. A cardiac catheterization is a diagnostic and occasionally a therapeutic procedure that allows a comprehensive examination of the heart and surrounding blood vessels. In cases where a coronary artery is blocked, a stent, a small mesh tube, can be used to open the blocked area. Also being used in narrow or weak arteries. Atherosclerosis is hardening of the arteries with yellowish fatty plaque. This can lead to coronary artery disease. This plaque can break off, leading to a myocardial infarction, MI, or heart attack. Blocked coronary arteries can often be treated using balloon angioplasty. Angioplasty can restore blood flow to the heart. During this procedure, a thin, flexible tube with a balloon at the end is threaded into the affected coronary artery. Once in place, the balloon is inflated, and this helps to press the plaque against the arterial wall. Sometimes a blockage in a coronary artery is so severe that balloon angioplasty is not an option. In this case, coronary bypass surgery is done. The great saphenous vein of the leg is often removed to bypass the area, restoring blood flow to the heart muscle. This vessel is called a graft. This concludes the first portion of Chapter 13.